Hello everybody, my name is Spoons Rattling, coming from inside a Citadel paint pot. Today we are doing the first episode on painting the Lord of Skulls, starting with its arms and head. So the first step you're going to want to do is make sure that you have an even base coat of black. Now when I sprayed these, I couldn't quite get full even coverage, so I had to come back around with just a Baden black or any black paint, and cover up any of the gray plastic just to make the paint scheme a bit more durable and such like that. Same effect as spray painting, just I didn't want to overspray it. I actually did switch out to one of those big flat-headed brushes to finish this off, because it was simply taking too long. Because this is a big model, a lot of surface to cover with black. So, after that, we're on to the first sort of real color, and that is Incubi Darkness. As you'll see here in a moment. You simply paint this on all of the armor panels, and with this, you are going to want to do probably 2 thin coats, maybe 3. I did have to do 3 in certain spots, so I tried to just do 3 all over to keep it nice and smooth. This color is quite nice. You just have to make sure you apply it very well. It's actually rather quickly become one of my favorite colors because it's a very interesting color between blue and black, and works very well for basing Alpha Legion colors, as it's sort of like, with the color changing aspect of Alpha Legion armor, this is kind of like the dullest section of the color changing. So once you go around and do all that, this is what it should look like. Now, I did move to the head as that has more details. Next is dry brushing on a deep purple. I used heavy purple from Vallejo, though you are free to use any purple you like. Nagath Darkness, I think is what it's called, from Games Workshop, works just as well. I just had this on hand because I had to order the heavy paint set from Vallejo a couple weeks ago. So from here, you just want to dry brush on all the armor panels to get the mid-tone between the Incubi Darkness and the final color that we're going to use, which is Sotek Green. Just make your way around and make sure you get this all over the armor panels. And since we haven't painted the trim yet, you don't have to be particularly neat, as we're going to paint the trim later. Speaking of, the next color we're going to use is Sotek Green. Now this is sort of the de facto matte color, like not using contrasts, for Alpha Legion. It's a very nice bluish green color that just complements them quite well, and gives them a sort of retro look actually. So I used a small dry brush from the Army Painter, which I highly recommend getting, because it makes dry brushing small areas super easy. And then you just want to do the same thing you do with the purple, going around and building up the color on all the armor panels. Focusing mostly on the higher areas, though you probably want to get some of this on every section, unless you have an area you want to leave purple or Incubi Darkness. So once you get to this stage, you're pretty much done with the main armor panels for the time being. Next, we are going to work on the trim. And the trim on this is... oh wait, sorry, I got ahead of myself. The first thing is the the skulls. So how I did these skulls is different than how I usually do it. I simply based these skulls with Rhinox hide, and then I proceeded to dry brush them afterwards, as you'll see here in a moment. Now this, I didn't actually have to wash it, but I'm quite happy with how it came out, as it's a bit more of a diluted, dulled down look for the skulls, which sort of keeps the focus on the shiny armor, or not shiny, but colorful armor, and very bright trim. So just go around. There's usually some area of skulls on all the front sections, on his head crest, obviously, around his elbows, and on the big front ram piece, but you'll see that when we paint the body of the beast, which is gonna take a while, obviously. But this is what it looks like, and then the next step is to dry brush that. So I mixed up heavy flesh tone from Vallejo and white ink to get a sort of bonish color that's, oh, actually, I guess I keep getting ahead of myself. Next is the silver. So we're going to paint this all over the trim. Of course, the KHORNE logo, all the metallic bits of that, and then the trim on the helmet itself. So just make your way around. You're probably going to want to do 2 thin coats of this, just to make sure it's nice and even. And don't worry about getting it on the skulls. We'll touch up the skulls before we dry brush them, which is the next step. So again, just make your way around the KHORNE logo and any trim, armor trim, and paint it with lead belcher is what I used. And this is what it looks like so far. I think, personally, quite like how it looks. But we can still take it further. So then the next step is to dry brush with that mix I mentioned earlier, with a flesh tone mixed with white ink. Though I'd recommend just using a bone paint, as it's going to be more consistent around the model in its entirety. So something like Wraithbone would be quite good for this. And since this color is so light, getting it on the metal didn't matter too much unless you really overloaded the brush. So you can be kind of fast and loose with this. And then here's what it looks like. I quite like the way the bones look. They look more bleached and old than the sort of warm, sandy color they usually are. And then the next step is edge highlighting with Stormhost Silver. Now this is a great model to practice this on because its trim is so big and thick, and on the head crest it's super easy. You can use the side of your brush, which is a great way to practice edge highlighting. So just make your way around and hit all the edges with this. Being at a sort of 45-degree angle is generally a good, sort of aim point for. And then after this, I would also recommend highlighting the armor plating on the helmet. Now, I know it's sort of daunting to try edge highlighting, but this model is so thick, like all the plating, that it's quite easy to edge highlight. It's faint, but you can notice it along the chin and around the eyes. Speaking of, we are now filling the eyes with white ink. Now this is because I'm using a different method to generate the glow. I'd recommend using this on any vents as well. I used Bealtan Green to wash the white ink, and it gives it a glowing appearance, and it's quite bright and striking, which I quite like. So then the next step, I believe, is the sort of correction step. Now this step might look a bit daunting because you're doing some more traditional highlighting than just dry brushing, but I use dry brushing as sort of a guideline. So when you dry brush, it'll often have sort of a dusty, sort of scratchy appearance. So look for those areas and then match the color using Sotek Green and just fill in those areas. Just giving it one coat that covers all the areas that were dry brushed, just where like the dry brush color is strong, gives it an actual highlighted look, and I think it looks quite nice, as we'll see here soon. Just take your time, and this is, again, it's very good practice for highlighting in general. I'm using this model as sort of my test so far to see how good I am at painting. So again, you're just going to want to take your time and go around the entirety of the model, or all the armor plates, that is, and any areas that have that Sotek Green brushed on, just strengthen the color with your brush. And it adds a very authentic look. Like you can see there's that panel lining, but you didn't have to actually do the panel lining because you used a different method. And then I also used a little bit of Gauss Blaster Green, which is a very light green, to edge highlight the sides of the mouth. I used this to edge highlight more in other areas, but I just wanted to incorporate it here to tie it into the rest of the color scheme. I then used a small bit of Moot Green to strengthen the green color in the eyes. Just a little bit. It's not necessary, but I think it added a little bit of extra intensity to the color. And then from there, you're pretty much done. I filled in the mouth grill with lead belcher and washed it with Nuln oil, obviously. And I didn't actually wash the trim. Don't wash the trim. Just wash that grill, as it makes it look more sort of dirty and dark. But it keeps the rest of the headdress and all the rest of the trim very bright. At first, I honestly forgot I did it, so you wouldn't necessarily have to use the wash, but I think it added something. And this is the final result. Your sort of first steps towards painting such a huge model, and I think it looks great. It's like a really good, almost next step for beginners. Anyways, I have been Spoons Rattling. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to see the rest of this series, where we're going to paint the blood tanks, and of course the entirety of the rest of the model, which is going to be a nice long video. And I will see you all next time.